Hi, everybody. This is Daryl Cross. We're going to get started here in just a moment as we have everybody come chiming in. We actually have over 29 law firms from multiple countries registered today. So thank you very much for being here. We're going to have some great fun over the next 30 minutes, some talk about some of the things that kind of hamper our sales training efforts. We have a special guest that is going to be joining us to talk about this, an expert in practice and using technology and tools to get us there. And of course, we welcome your chat and your questions as we go along. I'll be sharing my screen, going back and forth a little bit too. There will be a video recording made available for this. So if you want to share this, I will have that available for you afterwards. But I just want to say once again, thanks very much for being here on a Friday. So good morning, afternoon, and evening to anybody joining us to pay your time zone. Let's go ahead and share some slides as we go forward here. If you give me just a moment to be able to do that, I will do that right now. But what we're going to be talking about today is, of course, as we talked about before, putting your sales program on steroids. And as anybody knows that knows me, I'm a personal trainer. I've been one since I was about 18 years old. And I'm actually with the National Academy of Sports Medicine, just something I do on the side for fun. I do not endorse using steroids. I do not think you should be taking any kind of illegal enhancement to do it. But the concept does fit a little bit. The reason we talk about it this way is because people sometimes have these very anemic results when it comes to their sales programs. They're going through the motions. They do it day after day. They try different programs and different things. And much like going to the gym for years and years and not seeing any results, people get frustrated. They go, wait a minute, what's going on? I need a little boost. Well, for a lot of people, we might try to take some shortcuts with that. We're not endorsing that. What we're talking about is doing things with your existing programs and your existing people to just get better results in the same amount of time or less. A difference in attitude, a difference in programs, but really about how we're training people. That's the big thing that we're trying to look at doing differently. How do we just get better results out of it? So as we go forward with things, let's talk about the different parts of the program. First of all, in case you're wondering, this is $1 billion. If you have $1 billion, this is what it would look like, and that's me already pilfering from my stash a little bit there of how much I've probably used in my lifetime, how much it takes. But we're talking about the amount of dollars that are spent on training in the corporate environment is $70 billion per year, and it keeps going up. Now, this can be technology and training and people, whatever, but $70 billion, that is huge. And if we ask most people, how effective is that being? About 80% of them think it's not that effective. So do the math. I'm not going to try to do it in my head right now, probably 56 billion, something like that. But it's just not that effective. And what we have is a bunch of people that are going through training all the time and trying to get people engaged. They want to learn, retain, and go out and apply it. And this is what we frequently sitting across from us. People that are either bored, thinking about other things, frustrated. And it's not just the fact that they don't like the content, they don't like the format. They don't see how it applies to their actual lives, their actual job. And there's many reasons for that. We'll go through a number of them in this session, but we're also going to talk about things you can do immediately to start having some different changes with that. Because we don't want this look. This is not very happy. What we want to do is put our sales program on steroids. Our analogy of using steroids is that it doesn't do the work for us. What it allows us to do is take our existing training and get better results from them. You still have to do the work. You still have to spend the time. And in fact, at first, you might have to spend a little more time and a little bit more money. But once you get momentum and once you get results, people start craving it. They want to do it more and more and more. And so it's not the tricks that are doing the work. It's the people that are starting to do the work in different ways because they're getting better results, and it becomes self-sustaining. So that's the concept that we're looking for here. It's almost kind of like if you think about it with getting higher octane inside your fuel tank. You know, we see this every day, and a lot of us, people like me, I got this old Jeep, I get the lowest octane I can. I don't care how it sounds. You have a nicer car, you put higher octane in it. But a common misconception about that is this is about engine efficiency. Higher octane doesn't make your car go faster. It doesn't make it higher performance. It already has to be that kind of performance. But if you put the wrong kind of fuel in a high performance tank, it doesn't work. You get knocking and pinging. That's what high octane fuel does. It makes your existing system work better, work like it should. And so that's what we're trying to get when we talk about training. Improving the realization on people, not just your financials, not just your strategy, but how do we get the most out of what people are actually capable of? And a lot of our sales training programs are not built for success. So if you think about some of the learning theories, and we'll talk a little bit about this because we're going to keep coming back to this because there's a common misconception inside law firms, professional service firms, and lots of other corporations that these people are different. They're very smart. They work really hard. They get concepts really quick. So these things are different. They're not. They're still people. And that's the big challenge that we have. We assign to them this expertise based on law or medicine or business or whatever it is and say, oh, well, that transfers. It doesn't transfer at all. I mean, think about people in your law firm that know one practice really well, but if you ask them about a different practice, they get all flustered. I don't know anything about that. What if my client asks me? It's because expertise doesn't transfer. And some revolutionary work that's been happened a while back, this is 25 years ago, by Dr. Anders Ericsson, who's the foremost expert on expertise, talks about the fact that over time, these basic skills that we have, whether it's rainmaking, practicing law, or whatever, if we are not constantly challenging ourselves and putting ourselves in this cognitive, associative state, they start to taper off. They become automated. And when you hear people say things like, I could do this in my sleep, that's a bad sign. That means that they are automating it, and most of their responses to things are going to be very simplistic and not adapting to the new ways of things. This is how all performers get better, get stagnant, or start to lose results. Chess players, musicians, lawyers, salespeople, whatever. It all works the same. So let's talk about those 7 most common mistakes in training, and please stop, because we see this all the time. Now, I've worked inside of a law firm, and I've worked with many of you on the phone, and thanks very much for dialing in today. We'll take the questions and personal things that we want to talk about a little bit later. But let's talk about these on a broad scale. Now, I know some of these are because of the challenges we have at these types of firms, right? We have certain cultures, restrictions on time, money, travel, what it might be. But here are the most common things that we see. First of all, assuming training is always the answer to the problem. Now, how many times have you sat there and had a managing partner or a COO, practice group lead, or just even an individual lawyer say, these people can't sell. We need training. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Maybe they need coaching, information, might be a culture issue. But the thing is that most of us, this is great thing by Kathy Moore. She's a member of the Association of Talent Development, but this great thing out a few years ago about, is training really the answer? A nice little flow chart. People like flow charts. They're nice and linear and make sense. Someone says we need training. What is the business goal? Get more clients. Get more business from existing clients. What do we need to do to reach that goal? Have a training session. Good to go, right? Well, the problem is this isn't all of Kathy's thing. It's a bit more complicated than that. The problem is that training isn't always the answer at all. In fact, it might not even be close. Maybe it's a question with environment. Is it cultural? Training won't fix that. It'll make it worse. Knowledge. Have you already shared this information and they just don't have access to it? Then that is it. It's an infrastructure problem. If it's skills oriented, it's probably training, but we have some other questions to ask. If it's a motivation problem, it might be a coaching issue because it's not, they don't know how, but they just won't. And that's a why issue. So it's very complicated. I'm keeping this small on purpose to give you a scale of why it's not always training. If you look at professional instructive design people and the theory behind it, it's very complex. So if your training doesn't reflect all these needs assessments and tests, we should talk about it sometime because this is what professional curriculum designers will take a look at. Once again, I will email you the bigger version of it so it's easier to see. But let's get into number 2, front loading. So I see this all the time at law firms. We're going to have a retreat. We are going to have a training session, whatever. It's going to be on December 4th. It's going to be at the firm, 2 hours. Just ram it home. Let's get all that stuff in there, and then we're good to go. Well, that's not how people learn. Do you learn how to golf, play piano, dance, sing, anything that way? It just doesn't work because it doesn't work with humans. So this is a theory that is almost as old as I am. In fact, it is older than I am. The Atkinson-Shiffrin information processing model. This applies to humans, regardless of what task, domain, profession, or whatever. So they're really, really smart, they're really accomplished, or they have a lot of pressure, they don't have a lot of time. It doesn't matter. This is how process happens. We get this sensory input. This would be the initial training session. We need training, I need to have it, but it goes away. The other one would be the fact that it goes into short-term memory, okay? And the fact is that if we don't, try to get something where we do rehearsal, it also goes away. Oh, excuse me for 1 second here. Let's pop back up. And if we don't want to lose that, we have to put it into long-term memory so it can be brought in back to short-term memory when needed. Because like in business development, we don't do this every day. So this is the theory of cognitive load. And the more things they have to deal with, law, changes in legal practice, whatever, it doesn't matter. We have to spend the time doing it. So number 3, training in a K-12 format. K-12, I mean kindergarten to 12th grade. The fact is that adults and children are different. They may act like children from time to time, but the fact is the way they learn is completely different. Because when we train children, they have no baseline. They have no foundation. They have no work experience to call upon or analogies to look back upon. So they can memorize, they can do scripts, they can do homework and practice, and then that all boils in. But that is not how adults learn. In fact, there is a lot of theory on this. You can look at this, Knowles, you can look it up yourself. Adult learners have a self-concept of who they are, past experience, readiness to learn because it applies to how they can do their job tomorrow. How they are oriented to learning is simulation-based and workflow-based, not concepts. And then do they have motivation to learn because they're being influenced by comp, culture, peer pressure, whatever. We have to address this in our training. Number 4, a lack of deliberate practice, application, and simulation. If anybody has heard me talk on this subject before, this is a big issue. If you do not practice, they will not get better. If you don't apply it to daily things, they won't. Simulate, they won't better. I love bringing up the old thing of good old my friend Shaquille O'Neal, who is one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Hall of Fame, but for the life of him cannot make these free throws. And if you see some of the stats that pop up, hey, he's leading the team today, the free throw percentage, 62%. And it is a brick. And for whatever reason, I think probably it's a practice issue. No matter how good and dominant he is just not good at that, and it ain't going to change until we get better with it. Also, big one at law firms, culture shapes instructional design. This means my lawyers won't take time to do it. I don't have a lot of time. They don't like to practice. They don't like to be tested. They'd like to do it once and then figure it out. I'm sorry, it doesn't work. Save your money. Spend it on people that want to do it. Do a few people more. Spend it all on your rainmakers. Coach your rainmakers and think whatever. But if your people won't commit to the practice, the application, simulation, evaluation, everything like that, training won't work. Save your money. It doesn't work. It doesn't work with anybody. And this avoiding testing, evaluation, and competition. We've done this since law school. The fact is that we were fighting for positions in law school, in law firms, making partner, whatever. But when it comes to business development, we just don't want to do it. It's because they're not good at it. No one likes being judged on what they're not good at. But if you build a relationship with them, so it's a safe place to discuss it, it works. But we have to do testing, evaluation of current, and competition. This is another one too, though. Teaching thematically or sequentially. This may make sense, but it's more of a K through 12 approach. You can't teach concepts in a certain order. Today, we're going to talk about closing. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about networking. The next time, we're going to talk about this. Adult learning doesn't work that way. they think in tasks. I'm going to meet with a client. What are the things I need to know? I'm going to go close a deal. What are the things I need to know? Kind of like when you're on YouTube looking for a video about fixing a faucet. I don't need to know about how plumbing works, and then next week I'll take the thing about how pipes work, whatever. They don't put it together that way because it's not directly applicable. So if you're teaching that way in components, it's nice to have basic proficiency, but it has to be taught in what do I need to do tomorrow so they can apply it and then build upon it. It's a difference, and not many firms do that. So the theme of all these things, it is not sales training method that is the issue. It is how you're teaching someone. In fact, if you give me a random book off the shelf of sales training, I can take a look at it, reformat how you do your training, and make it work. I don't care whose content it is, because the method is, the way that we do it is more important than the method. No matter what consultant, book, or style that you use, change the how. What we're trying to get people to do is increase their functional reserve. That is taking their level of competency now, changing the way we do it through repetition, training under duress, pressure, and simulation. Add a little competition, we get more out of them, then we raise their potential. So what should we do? There's a few things that we can do almost immediately that can help this out. And we'll go through this. The way we talked about it is we went and talked to some of the biggest organizations in the world that have elite training, elite performers. One of the pushbacks I get all the time is, hey, our people are really smart. They're really busy. They're the best at what they do. How can I tell them what to do next? All these people on the screen do exactly that. Astronauts in the top left, learning how to fly because almost none of them knew how, but they can after training. Navy SEALs didn't know how to do what they did. Police officers, firefighters. When the consequences are really, really high, people train a certain way. So that's how we help firms with that. We change their training programs to reflect how do we apply it to their day-to-day job, practice, simulate, test, do it again. And you will actually see that they start to rely on each other as teammates and crave that kind of challenge. So number one, start assessing actual performance. Nobody likes this. It's part of the deal, though. If we're going to take an enterprise of how do we get better at something, the concept of not testing someone in the beginning and periodically along the way, that doesn't work anywhere. Whether it's practicing law, surgery, litigation first chair, whatever, we just don't, I got it, I'll figure it out, trust me. We have to do it. So if we create private coaching engagements to do it, that's one way of doing it. If we want to have it in a small group where everybody can reflect and do feedback on each other, that's fine too. But it is part of the deal. One way to do this is really start to focus on proficiency. What is expected of everyone? The fact is, this is an example of what's called a greenie board. Some of you may have seen this before. Really important if you are a pilot flying in the Navy, you have to land on an aircraft carrier. The fact is, the most important job in the world is landing. You got to do it right every single time. And they have this on the wall inside of a carrier. Up on the wall in the ready room is this greenie board that has every pilot on here and gives them a green for okay. That means they did what they're supposed to do. You can see not everybody did it all the time. Reds mean you're about to be kicked off the ship. You're a little bit dangerous. But everybody's expected to do it well. It's not a contest for who's the best. It's about proficiency. Everybody's expected to do it. So I encourage you to think about this for business development. If you expect everybody to be able to give a elevator speech, put this up on the wall. And once everybody can do it, raise the level again. Now I want everybody to do 2 client meetings a week or 1 or whatever. Once everybody gets greens, move it up again. We keep raising the expectations and the proficiency, not having contests to see who is the best. The other one is practice, rehearsing, and simulate. Because even your superstars, actually, especially your superstars, do not get better without practice. There are absolutely no exceptions. And I'll let this play in the background for a little bit here. I'm about to bring up a guest. One of our guests here is an expert with a company called Rehearsal. Rehearsal is who I work with to develop some of my video simulation software that we use for corporations and law firms to really get the most out of people. How do we watch video simulations and then respond to them via video and be able to get feedback from an internal or external coach. Because really the thing is without practice, we can't do a lot of these big things. Whether it is something like, surfing, or we are talking about music, anything that is out there, it's essential to get this practice out here. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this for just one moment here and go ahead and bring up my friend here, Andrew. Andrew, are you with us today?
I am, Daryl. Thank you for having us.
Andrew, thanks so much. Now, you work with a number of companies all over the world when it comes to practice and training. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've seen from the companies that adopt that approach versus some that don't?
Sure. No, I think the companies who adopt it full-heartedly recognize that training alone is not enough, and that the key element and the differentiator there is practice, and practicing with intent. Okay, and really where we come into that is providing a platform that combines technology with the power of practice.
And I know a lot of times people don't like to be tested. They don't like to do things like, well, I don't like how I look on video, or, I don't like to be told over and over again, let's try it again. I mean, how do you deal with that kind of culture issue? Because we do get it a lot at the more expert levels of people that we deal with.
No, absolutely. And you bring up a great point. And I've certainly been in uncomfortable classroom training, role play scenarios where we're pretending to sell each other something, and someone says something that's not quite on the mark, and everybody snickers about it. And really where we focus in this video role play technology is to provide a platform that gives the learner and the coach or mentor a safe place to practice, meaning they can respond to a particular scenario that's been created by their company, and they can watch themselves before anyone else sees it. If they're not happy with it, they can erase it and re-record it, and erase it and re-record it. And we see a lot of repetition, and repetition is where a lot of the learning takes place and a lot of the growth takes place. And I think the other thing that people don't realize too is on the coach or mentor side, where you're coaching a learner and helping them elevate their skills, the coaches and mentors are elevating their skills as well, right? So everyone thinks because someone's a coach or a supervisor or a manager or an executive that they know how to provide feedback and coach. It's not necessarily true, but our platform really provides that power of practice and repetition on both sides.
Well, I appreciate you doing that, Andrew. And just moving on here, one of the concepts that I've seen that's been really useful in your approach and what I've seen successful firms, corporations and law firms doing is acknowledging the fact that this training has to be just in time and on the job. The fact is that we don't have hours to put in people into training environments. And the fact is also that travel is too expensive. People are used to going to see video all the time. If you fix a faucet, you go to YouTube to do it. We see more and more companies doing this. It's a method to have just in time. As I'm sitting in the lobby of a client about to go up, I can look at video, I can rehearse scenarios. It also is what allows trainers to be able to record scenarios. Let's say that a major change happened, a bunch of laterals joined the firm, or a bunch of laterals left the firm, or there's this new opportunity because of the Amazon selecting a certain one. We can create scenarios on the fly, push them out to our lawyers, and no matter where they are, on their laptop or their desktop or whatever, be able to do that, send their response to a coach, and then the coach themselves can actually record a response and send it back. And put it up on a leaderboard for other people to see and kind of judge, hey, here's a good way to handle that before they walk in. So they're learning from their peers, and they're also learning from that. And that's what we do see also, base training on tasks. This goes back to the adult learning theory of what not to do, of just teaching people concepts or principles. Wear your name tag on the right, make sure you ask about their business. If they say this, do that. But it has to be based actually on tasks. So think about it. What do every one of my lawyers need to know how to do on business development? Build your training around fixing that task, and then do a harder one, and then do a harder one. Not just all the ingredients, and then expect they know how to cook. Doesn't work that way. We have to do recipes, put together, learn how to do it. And think about that. They need to train that way too. Think about it as a pit crew. If I'm the person that changes the left front tire on a pit crew, I can train on that all day, that skill. But if I don't know how it fits in with everything else, it's out of context and I don't get it. Much less the fact if I don't practice it, I won't be good. But I can't quite practice the left-hand tire change without knowing the sequence of everything else that has to happen. So make sure your lawyers are training in teams and also reinforcing skills in teams with their deliberate practice. And one of the last principles here, cross one gap at a time. So we need to build upon skills. We can't just say, hey, you'd like to be a rainmaker? Here are the 57 things you need to do and you'll get there. Here's number 1. They'll quit. They always will, especially if they don't feel like they have competency and haven't done it before. They'll look at the scale of it and say, you know what, I'll just stick to writing. I'll just do good work. It's because it's too big. We have to build them up, not accomplish one skill at a time, but gap. Can I go out and have an initial meeting? Yes or no? Can I have an initial meeting and bring information back and put a proposal together? Yes or no? Can I close a deal? Yes or no? We have to ratchet them up at these different levels, because also a little bit more on the theory. These are the levels of instruction. This is just regarded as sacred in the training industry. And if you haven't seen it before, you can look at it, the attributions at the bottom. But these are the 9 things that have to happen for people to learn anything. So if you're one of those people learning the piano or the guitar after seeing A Star Is Born or whatever it might be, including business development lawyers, if you are not doing these things, it will not stick. And the final piece here, sales needs a system. Improve your training first. Go back and look at what you're doing right now. Don't change your content. It takes too long. You'll be constantly just looking at things. Improve the infrastructure after you improve how you're delivering content. Simulations, practice, evaluations, a little bit of competition. Once you do that, then it's scalable, because I tell you what, sales management leadership is complicated. This is from the Association for Talent Development, which is the world authority on training. There's over 40,000 members in almost every country. This is everything that's involved in sales training. And we got to fix the training first, because if we don't, there's just too much other stuff to do. We have to fix that first, then the infrastructure, and then we start working on these other pieces. So let's get to work on it. There's lots of things that we can try to do with sales training, but just changing the method of how we do it has got to be number 1. And I'm happy to answer any questions or take any chat message that we have here. Please feel free to chime in. And I have Kim on the line. Kim, did you have any questions from anybody? Might want to take you off mute.
There we go. Can you hear me?
I sure can, Kim. Any questions that have come in?
Yes. So we have one that, what do you do if people just don't like to practice, what they've been taught, and how would you approach that?
Well, it's a really common issue. Andrew, I might ask you to chime in here too, what you've done with clients. But the first thing I'll say is knowing law firms. The fact is people do practice all the time when it comes to law. When they practice their closing arguments, how they question a witness, being first chair for the first time, or even back in law school, what argument are they going to make in moot court or mock trial? We just need to transfer this over to business development. So it's not that they don't believe in practice. They don't believe in looking silly and looking like they're a rookie at something for the first time in probably 20 years. So if we have to change the environment, video-based, private meetings, meeting with a coach that they trust, that's probably the better way to get practice, or practicing on each other. They can sit in an office together and say, hey, let me practice on you this conversation I'm going to have with a client in an hour today, or do it via video or video conference. But they need to practice. There's really no shortcut to it. Andrew, anything from that you've heard from your clients on that issue?
Well, I think, like anything, when you start to do something new, you take baby steps, right? So we encourage clients to assign a first scenario of, hey, Daryl, introduce yourself and tell us an interesting fact about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a safe place. It's not anything private, and it's something that you're an expert in. No one knows you like you do, and it gives them an opportunity to see themselves on camera and get used to interacting that way. But start small.
Yeah, it's a great idea. A lot of times we like to throw people in the deep end of the pool, but it's kind of like encouraging me to do my first marathon by pairing me off with a Kenyan Olympic champion and say, just do what he does. I'm going to quit. I'll tell you that right now. And if we do the same thing with our business development and sales people, hey, just copy that rainmaker, just do what they do. It's not helpful. We have to build it up. Kim, any other questions coming in?
No, we're good at this point.
Oh, great. And it looks like we're right at time anyway. So I would like to thank everybody for joining us today to talk about this. We talked a little bit about theory just to frame things a little bit. Then we get into the 7 things that really mess up most training departments. A lot of these things we know. We know pretty well that they don't work well, but we feel constrained. So take some of the science and some of the research that is out there. There's a lot of things by Dr. Erickson, Dr. Gangi, all these that you can look up and show. The question is how do we make it bite-sized? I think we need to take advantage of video, technology, online teleconferencing, using live simulations in your conference room where we bring in actors and do simulations of real RFP events that take the exact amount of time. That's how people get better. So whether you are a pilot, a musician, an athlete, or a business developing lawyer, this is how people learn. So if you have any questions about any of these things, please feel free to contact me directly at dcross@lawvision.com. We will provide a link to this recording for everybody in attendance. Feel free to share it. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. So have a great weekend, everybody. And until we talk again, good hunting, everyone.